Welcome to Recovery Corner, where the many pathways of recovery intersect. This is a space where you will hear personal stories of triumph in recovery, gain insights into various recovery-oriented systems, and learn how leaders across the country are building recovery-ready communities. The Recovery Corner podcast does not provide clinical advice.
Here we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you all aren't sick of me yet. I've been recording a lot of these lately, but I am here with my friend, Brandon Hilger. He's a super awesome dude and a person in long-term recovery. How are you today, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Carly. How are you doing?
I'm doing really great. It's finally sunny here in San Diego and happy to have this chat with you. Brandon, do you just want to start us off telling us a little bit about yourself? Anything you want to share about your
Sure, yeah, definitely. I was born in California originally, but I moved to Arizona when I was under 2 years old. So I pretty much grew up in Arizona my whole life. And I have been in need of some sort of recovery probably since I was 16, 17 years old. But it took me until I was 21 to even figure out what that began to look like for me. And without kind of going into gory details of the whole story, essentially, I ended up getting a lot of breaks in life over and over and over again that have led me to still be alive and somewhat well today. And these are breaks that I don't see everybody getting, right? And so that fortune that I got from all of the different opportunities and third and fourth and 80th chances that I got over 10, 12 years of in and out of recovery, needing recovery, I ultimately feel like everyone should be given those opportunities. When I was first approached about recovery, I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know what it looked like. I thought it meant don't get physically dependent on drugs or alcohol, right? So if I didn't do it every day, if I tried all the different stuff of how I can make it all kind of work for me in my life, and I kept ending up back in detoxes and detoxes and detoxes. But I was lucky. I had middle-class family with good insurance, with $0 copays and zero deductible for substance use treatment. And so I could revolving door treatment, and it was going to be there when I was finally ready, right? I could just keep going. I could just keep going. I could just keep going. I completed, between treatments and 7-day plus detox days, I completed 35 to 40 treatment episodes over 8 years. And that sounds like a failure story, but ultimately my view was that, and the view that I've taken with other friends and people in recovery or seeking recovery or out there using or seeking different forms of harm reduction, is that that's what it took for me. I wasn't ready when I was 21 years old. My brain wasn't going to make those connections. So I needed the opportunity to stay alive long enough to get to when I was in my later 20s and finally find recovery and actually practice it and have life improvements. And for me, recovery wasn't about just stopping substances. That was a pretty bleak outlook on life. For me, I needed to find opportunities. I needed to find things I was passionate about. I needed to find a community. I didn't get a lot of success in AA other than building a community around me. I didn't get a lot of success in treatment from the groups and from the therapy, as helpful as it can be. But what I got was the opportunity to look at what my career goals were, take a moment to sit back and figure out things in life that I could do that were better than the drugs and alcohol, because ultimately that's what I needed. I needed something as good or better. Most people who suffer from substance use disorder do not want to or will not trade that in for a worse feeling life, right? So I had to find things, and the treatment program I went to, I was lucky enough that they were big on extracurricular and activities and hobbies and career education, resumes, whatever it was. I ended up getting a job in treatment right out of there. I got sober living paid for. I got treatment paid for. And again, this is the story of just all the breaks. I committed some fortunately non-violent, serious crimes in my early 20s that 95% of people will go to prison for 5 to 10 years, kind of guaranteed for, and I did not. I spent 18 hours in jail. I got OR released on everything. I got probation, which I screwed up, but still got successfully discharged from for absolutely no good reason, and never went back to prison, never went back to jail, never had any of that stuff come up. And so I got to keep going through life and seeking recovery. When other people don't get that opportunity, they would have gone to prison for the things that I did. And all those opportunities and breaks that I kept catching. My belief system is complicated, but there has to be a reason that I am not one of the other 99% that would have been dead or in jail by now. I did nothing myself to prevent that. It was the people around me, the community I connected with, my family, and friends that I met in recovery that stood with me, that kind of took me through that and kept getting me these opportunities and breaks till I finally landed in successful treatment, and long-term recovery and sober living, like I talked about, that I was in for 3 months after that. And people kept giving to me, and they didn't ask me for anything. All these people in recovery, whether it was AA recovery or a different kind of recovery, or whether they found marijuana maintenance worked great for them, or they were on Suboxone, or they were, it didn't really matter. All these people supported me. And I did horrible things in treatment. I stole Valiums from the detox. Like I was absolutely out of control. They found all the drugs I had been hoarding. They did all that. They didn't kick me out. They brought me back through, detoxed me again, right? And kept doing that. And for me, I know that I came up in a recovery atmosphere of tough love, right? Al-Anon, my mom went to Al-Anon. I would call her and she'd say, they said not to talk to you, and all that kind of stuff, right? And that all came from the goodness of the heart. Like it was not easy for my mom to do, and it wasn't easy for other people around me to do. And in my view, it wasn't what I needed. What I needed was the support and the love. And that's kind of where recovery took me into treatment. And working in treatment, I started in marketing and social media, stuff like that, Google AdWords and all that kind of stuff, and worked my way through marketing and all that. And this was just a passion. Like I get up in the morning, I was excited to do it, to talk to people on the phone about getting care and treatment and all that kind of stuff. And that really, as much as the rehabs and the treatments and the meetings helped me just having this life that was better. And finally actually finding it. And I couldn't do that just with not drinking or using. I couldn't do that just with some of these other things. I had to have it kind of all together. And when that all finally clicked, it was pretty amazing for me. But then working through treatment, I start to slowly kind of see how difficult it is. And I ended up opening my own treatment center after a few years. It was an easy process back then. Luckily, regulations have caught up a little bit and make it a little harder, but it's still unfortunately pretty easy to do. I ran a treatment center for a while with some investors, which turned out to be a mistake for someone whose goal was living a comfortable enough life while helping people, right? And so private treatment tends to be profit motive and insurance controlled. And the more and more that we had to cut program to keep profits, to keep the board happy, to keep the investors happy, how difficult it was in months when we couldn't do that. And we had to cut programming that insurance wouldn't reimburse. Programming like finding hobbies, finding life's passions, employment services and stuff like that was not reimbursable by insurance. And so most treatment centers were not paying people to supply those services. There's a lot of new cutting edge stuff with neuroscience. We were doing neurofeedback, biofeedback. We had to cut those services because they were only reimbursing at $15 to $20 a session. And the machines and techs cost $15,000 or more to operate. So the more and more I wanted to help people and provide some of these things that were more than just the therapy, and actually get people connected to community and get out there and work on some more of the more evidence-based stuff that has taken treatment 50, 60 years to catch up to. We weren't really able to do that. And when I separated from that facility a few years ago, and ownership went to the investors and everything like that. I saw the posting for YPR after taking a little bit of time off to kind of figure out life, and it was just, it seemed perfect. And then I got to talk to Soraya about it and talk about the right person to talk about YPR to you and their passion for recovery. Soraya and I think I had an hour-long interview of just conversational interview with Soraya just about recovery and what YPR does and how excited I am about the ability to give people a lot of the stuff that helped me without asking for anything from them, without them having to be well off, without them having to have $20,000, $40,000 or a $2,500 deductible or anything like that. We can just connect them to services and the lack of stigma around harm reduction and that being such a big part of my story. I was on methadone, I was on Suboxone, I've been on everything. And that was a big part of my story. And I was rejected all over town for being on any kind of mat. And the inclusiveness of YPR, you can come up to probably you, Carly, at a meeting or come up to you at Father Joe's with a needle hanging out of your arm, and you're going to be of help and service to that person. And that wasn't my experience with a lot of people or with a lot of organizations or with a lot of treatment. And so that was something that was newer to me. And I know there are like needle exchange organizations and some lower bottom organizations that deal with some of that stuff, but YPR was inclusive. It wasn't just, YPR is not just handing out clean needles. YPR is not just handing out Narcan. YPR's promoting abstinence, harm reduction, the whole thing, whatever it is you need. Because my true opinion is that 11% of people AA and 12-step programs work awesome for, and then you have the other 89% that we have to look out for. And then there's different things that work for these groups of people, and YPR is not opposed to offering all of them and having a legislative agenda that supports our ability to continue to offer more. So that's my spiel on how I got here and kind of the excitement and passion around YPR and being able to provide services in a nonprofit atmosphere.
Yeah, man. I mean, like you talked about so much. So just like sum that up a little bit. Like Brandon, you come from addiction background, you went through like revolving doors of treatment and like nothing was working for you really until you kind of got like a little bit of everything. It sounds like, you were doing the treatment and doing the therapy, but you were getting fellowship and like finally able to plug into something that gave you meaning through working in treatment, and that helped you stay. But like my question, I guess, first of all, is like, what do you think, maybe you kind of already talked about this a little bit, but what do you think like really like ultimately got you to like sit down and stay sober, for like the long term? You have multiple years of recovery now, right? But like, what do you think it was?
Like you said, there was like this combination, and for me, it was the compassion, the opportunity. Trying to think of what actually like transpired at that point that made things click. And it's really hard because people obviously always kind of want an answer to that, like what was it? And it was a combination, but it was this opportunity and finding a passion while having the opportunity to do that, and then building the self-confidence after that. So it kind of took this path upwards where I didn't have the confidence, I didn't have the belief in myself, and didn't have any of that. But a path was kind of put in front of me that allowed me to, okay, I can submit a resume. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. Okay, this job sounds really great. I'm going to do this. I went to training, and it just kind of built on itself to where I was slowly not thinking about it. Like I think that being in a controlled recovery environment for 6 months was incredibly helpful, and I'd love to have that opportunity. That's a pipe dream of mine, to be able to have $1 billion and just provide 6 months of free care for people. But without that out there, what YPR is able to do is at least get those resources there without having that type of budget available. But yeah, for me, it was all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, just share, like, for people who are listening who may not know exactly the resources that we do have. Obviously you're the California program manager and our program is specific to California, but do you maybe just want to talk about for a minute what we do that is obviously like unique from insurance based treatment programs? Like, what does YPR offer? You know, obviously you and I know, but
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you're starting just from the harm reduction aspect of what YPR offers with Narcan handouts and workshops, Narcan trainings on how to use those things and all that kind of stuff. And then we have the all recovery meeting groups and the workshops and all that kind of stuff. So the all recovery meetings are awesome, especially to me. I'm a person who has been asked to leave AA meetings plenty of times by old timers who did not have an interest in hearing my story, even if I called heroin alcohol just for the sake of the meeting, right? So I love the openness of the all recovery meetings and the fact that you can come there and share anything, and it doesn't have to be recovery related. And that's what I like about YPR is it's not all about drugs, right?
yeah,
It's about everything else. And I focused for the first 10 years of trying to find recovery on the drugs. I have to not use them. And that's it. That's what I'm doing. I'm just not using the drugs. And I wasn't focused on anything else, building a life. And YPR kind of gets you into the community, and if you take the opportunity, and that's kind of the thread through all types of recovery is you got to show up and take the opportunity. But people would always say that to me in AA, and it's like, well, you aren't doing it right then. Well, maybe it wasn't right for me, and maybe what YPR is doing is right for me. And that's a great feeling to have. So beyond that, beyond just the workshops offered to the public, the EPIC workshops and Phoenix workshops, the re-entry stuff that with the Phoenix program that Marty and Dan had worked on, and that I know Kevin had worked on for a long time, offering programs to people directly out of incarceration who can then look for recovery, job opportunities, education opportunities and stuff through guidance groups and community of YPR. In addition to the EPIC programming, and EPIC is youth. Jessica works in LA with a lot of youth. We have movement to move forward with a lot of youth programming. So the EPIC life skills workshops, which I think are great. Like, how often do you get an opportunity? Some treatment centers might provide this in aftercare, but really we come in as a comprehensive aftercare program for treatment centers, offering EPIC community activities, resources, resume building, education assistance, housing. How do you get housing? How do you do these next steps in life? And treatment centers often are just, you're discharged, right? You can discharge to the next level of care, but that's about it. Once you're out of the final level of care, now what? And if you've established a relationship with a YPR chapter while you're entering recovery, it's a much easier next step of now.
yeah. Yeah, you touched on something that I think about a lot, and I've talked about this, I know, before on the podcast and maybe, you know, just with other people within YPR, but like kind of going back to the all recovery or all pathways thing, like, and the AA mindset. Like, I, coming from a 12-step background, I have and now doing YPR stuff on the ground in San Diego, my whole perspective on what actually helps people sometimes is shifting. And like seeing that, like, just having somewhere to show up where people love you and accept you no matter what you're going through has been really instrumental for some folks that I work with, like in San Diego. And just seeing, like, people call it like YPR family, and people who've been coming back for years. And I can think of multiple participants who maybe have done 12-step or done AA, NA, or maybe kind of lightly do it, but I can think of multiple people who, like, YPR now, which is amazing to me, is their primary recovery group. You know, like, just in all, we don't have a specific program necessarily. We're peer support services, but just having that peer support has been enough for some people to stay sober for like over a year at this point, which is really cool. And like, I think it's not for everyone, it's not going to work for everyone, but like, just that whole like paradigm, I think can be shifted in as far as recovery goes, you know, across all different kinds of organizations and agencies. It's not one way or the highway. And I don't know, I feel like it's up to us as leaders in recovery to be open-minded to that and support people and meet people where they're at, you know. But
Definitely. And there's 50 million or more people in the United States alone who meet the ACM criteria for substance use disorder. And like I said, 12-step programs tend to be effective with 10 to 20%. And we serve thousands and thousands of participants throughout California every year. And we aren't even scratching the surface on 10% of those people who may need services. So I love having that variety available so people that can find what is going to work for them. Like you said, YPR might not be it, but if you break it down and a fifth of the population is effective with different methods, YPR has a population of 8 million people we might be able to be effective with. So
right. Yeah. Even if one person, like one life is truly changed by a chapter lead's work in the city they're at, that's significant to me. But I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, I guess this isn't really an opinion, but what do you see, given your expertise, I guess, on the background, for somebody who maybe doesn't have a whole lot of resources and is seeking treatment, do you have any sort of advice, or how does somebody get started, I guess, on recovery and getting sober?
Well, and it really kind of depends on where you're at, and both mentally and physically located as well, and what services that you actually need to get going. I mean, you can transition through an emergency department if you have no resources and you need a detox, especially if you're talking about alcohol or benzodiazepines. You can go to the emergency department. Not every emergency department is going to be properly equipped. I mean, they'll keep you safe and detox you, and you'll get a bill later, and you don't need to pay for that up front. A lot of emergency departments are now working with programs. There's Bridges in California that partners emergency programs with continuing resources and things like that. So you can usually go in there and get pointed in the right direction once you're medically stabilized. You're going to want to be on, if you're in California, you're going to want to be on Medi-Cal, and usually the emergency department will have a social worker that can help you get set up on that if you don't already have it. And then you're going to want to get on every waiting list for treatment centers that can take you. Sometimes Medi-Cal will be county determined, so you're going to have to be within the county your Medi-Cal is there are some great facilities that take Medi-Cal. There's Tarzana in Tarzana, of course. I can't think of a ton other off the top of my head, but there can be a wait, and it can be difficult. And so reaching out to and us connecting, and YPR connecting, with Bridges in California, to be a resource for people who may not be able to get directly into the right level of care or anything like that, to provide support while they can. And then in addition to that, with the Communities of Color grant that we're launching right now, there's additional opportunities to work with that population and doing handoffs to treatment. So YPR can also possibly help with those. YPR and other organizations that the emergency departments might partner with can help people navigate that as well. I haven't been involved in trying to get people into treatment for a while now, but that tends to be the method you need to go through if you are seeking treatment. Now, of course, if you're not necessarily in need of a medical level of care, reaching out to this organization, showing up at an AA meeting will start getting you some resources. I've had a ton of people in AA, NA, and 12-step, other 12-step meetings point me in the right way outside of AA and help me in those regards too. But yeah, it's one of those questions where when you first asked it, I wasn't really thinking it, but it's tough. It's like you gotta really do the footwork. It's a lot easier if you have great insurance and can cover your deductible. You can go to any of 200 facilities in the state, but that's kind of the process. Luckily, California at least has been putting more and more money behind Medi-Cal and Medicaid covered treatment. And so that's great. I know I just saw some other grants over the beginning of this year come out that YPR wouldn't necessarily be qualified to represent because they're looking for brick and mortar treatment, but supporting MAT in treatment and bringing in MAT physicians and all that kind of stuff is all being sponsored by the state to start continue to improve capacity and treatment at the Medi-Cal facilities. So
yeah, I mean, it's so tough to navigate. I wish there was an easier one size fits all resource guide to like getting sober, finding treatment. Just everybody's in such a different situation, but like, I've never had to do it, but I mean, I can imagine it'd be like so hard to try and figure out like, what do? I have no money, no insurance. Like, where do you even start in like being on drugs or being, drinking a lot to the point where you do need a medical detox. And I think that's why a lot of people don't really get help until they've overdosed and someone sends them to the hospital, or sends them to, or like they have to do some kind of like medical intervention for themselves. But I was talking about this the other day with another person on this podcast, actually, about like somebody doesn't have to hit rock bottom necessarily to start seeking those things out. And that's kind of like what we're here to do partly at YPR, is support people before they have to get there.
yeah, and I absolutely believe that. I've always had, like I said, I grew up in a tough love of recovery era where, with hardcore Al-Anon and all of that. And it's something where they always say you have to hit rock bottom, just leave them alone until they hit rock bottom. But rock bottom can be death for a lot of people. And then beyond that, it wasn't necessary in my experience. Like I said, for me, if I had found some of those things earlier, maybe that, and it all come together earlier, maybe whatever my bottom was wouldn't have been there. But you can definitely catch people on the way down, and you can definitely provide these resources to people all over areas of the spectrum. And nobody needs to be homeless, living on the streets, and completely destitute before getting help, or has to do something completely terrible or hurt someone or themselves before they get help. I've never believed that, and I like the ability to have all these resources for people regardless of where they're at, 'cause it's not necessary. In my experience, I've seen people recover from moderate marijuana dependencies all the way up to hardcore heroin and cocaine usage. So
yeah, it's just having just enough wanting it, I guess. I don't even think you need to all the way want it, but if a part of you does, I think anything's possible.
If you find something better on your way down, I guess,
Yeah.
it's like you're usually going to grab that. If I see something better on the way down, and for me, it's about making that visible, so people can see that. Because if you're on your way down and you don't see anything to grab onto, then you're just going to keep going, right? And like you said, when you have no money, no resources, and you're on the street, what are you going to do? You keep going down until a resource is put in front of you, and that's kind of YPR's mission, I guess.
Yeah, make recovery visible. I like that. Yeah, and it's not there's so much stigma and the anonymous piece of it. Like, there are people out there having fun and being sober and like having more fun than they were in addiction or drug use, even if you're not an addict. Like, it's completely, I'm really happy that it's becoming a little more trendy, I feel like, to be sober. Which is great, more non-alcoholic beers and stuff on the market, and just like more social events where it's acceptable to be sober. The partiers will always be there, but if there's a community for somebody who wants to be sober or be like more sober, they can find those and plug into it now more easily, I feel like, as compared to even like 5 years ago. It's definitely growing.
Yeah, it's something where you used to say, I don't drink, and people would question you, and now they're like, that's awesome. That's the response a lot of times. Oh, that's good for you. Is the response a lot. or I wish I didn't. You'll even get those sometimes.
They get jealous.
Yeah.
They should be. It's awesome to have a clear mind and not wake up sick.
And what's great is they can also ask you, how'd you do that? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have that opportunity. So
yeah,
definitely, I'm happy to be open about it. And I like that. I mean, maybe our slogan, what did you come up with? Keep recovery, make recovery visible. Is that better than recover out loud? Isn't that the big campaign that's been going on for a while?
Yeah, I
Out loud.
mean, same thing.
Keep recovery visible.
Tomato, whatever. I mean, I guess whatever lands for somebody is what lands. But if you had one piece of advice before we wrap it up, I know I've asked you for a lot of advice, but I think you're a good guy for it. Just like piece of advice for somebody who's on their journey, just finding, like, in recovery, finding recovery, maybe been sober for a while. What would you say to somebody?
Wait, so are you saying someone who's new or someone who's been sober for a while?
I don't know, I guess anywhere on their journey. If it's easier, you can choose one.
Well, I mean, with someone who's newer, I mean, the cliche from 12 steps, don't quit before the miracle happens. But for me, I kind of have the perspective of, you don't give up, and don't. For me, it was about saying yes, like the yes man thing. And I think there was something where someone had to say yes to everything. It was a TV show or something at one point. But anyway, I think it was called Yes Man, actually. But not, because then you don't miss those opportunities, right? So someone says, hey, do you want to come with me here? Say yes. If you're newer, yes. Say yes to people. Because if I'd said no to everybody, I wouldn't have even gone to California and got treated. That wouldn't even happen. That was my first yes. I had to say, yes, I'll get on the plane. Yes, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. I let other people make my decisions, and I kept saying yes. And I trusted the people. Obviously, don't let people you don't trust make your decisions. But if you trust that someone has your best interest in mind for you, you might not know what that is. And I didn't. So I had to say yes. And even later in recovery, honestly, that kind of still goes, like, when someone comes up and asks for your help, yes. If someone, and I'm not talking about help for getting sober, right? I'm saying just help, like, hey, can you help me with my couch? My car broke down, can you pick me up? Those kind of things. Those relationships are what connected me to people that were my support group and are now. Saying yes. So I guess my biggest piece of advice is say yes.
Yeah, say yes. I like that. Say yes to recovery, yes to fun, yes to service, all of that stuff. But thank you so much for your time, Brandon. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking with you about this.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Bye now.